Hey, what's up, guys? So this video will be about UFC 207. It's going to be tomorrow, actually, which will be Friday, December 30th. The main event is Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes, and obviously that's going to be the fight most people are tuning in to see. There are a bunch of other really good fights, though. It's a fairly stacked card. There's some good fights on the prelims, and then every fight on the main card should be a good fight. On the prelims, there's a couple fights that aren't that interesting, but they have at least one fighter that I'm interested in them, like Alex Oliveira versus Oliveira versus Tim Means. That's going to be a really good fight. Oliveira is a big guy, and he's big for the division, and so is Tim Means. Tim Means is like 6'2", and thick, and fights at 170, and he's got a really good reach. He's really well-rounded. He's a very good striker from outside and very good from within the clinch. He's a good dirty boxer. He's got good elbows. Just very well-rounded. He doesn't take fights to the ground very much, but he does have some ground skills, and he can defend himself pretty well. And then Alex Oliveira is also a big guy and well-rounded. Better on the ground than Means, but not quite as good of a striker. So that fight will mostly be about where it takes place. And depending on where it takes place, one of them will have an advantage. If it's on the feet and Means can stay on the outside and pick them apart with jabs and kicks, that definitely favors Means. On the ground, it definitely favors Oliveira. And then in the clinch is where I think this fight could be very interesting. I'm interested to see how it turns out. Means is very good in the clinch, like I was saying. Good dirty boxers, good elbows, good knees. Oliveira's good in the clinch too, though. And he's going to be looking to try to probably get Means down. So it'll be about, if they get into the clinch, it'll mostly be about whether Means can get his offense off or Oliveira can get him down. Which one of those happens will probably dictate who wins this fight. I see Means winning. Probably by TKO. Means is a pretty good finisher. He's got good killer instinct, and when he hurts somebody, he jumps on it and really tries to finish. I could see the fight going to decision. And I really doubt that Oliveira will be able to submit Means. That's why I feel like Means will win this fight, because I think Means's main goal is more obtainable than Oliveira's main goal, if that makes sense. I feel like Means will have an easier time staying on the outside, picking him apart with strikes, maybe getting in the clinch, landing some elbows, getting the TKO, or winning the decision. I feel like that's much more likely to happen than Oliveira getting Means down and then either controlling him on the ground or submitting him. I don't see that happening. And so I think Means will win that fight. Brandon Thatch is back. He's going to be fighting on the prelims. He's fighting a guy named Nico Price, who I'm not terribly familiar with. And so I don't have much to say about the actual fight, but I am interested to see how Thatch looks. He's huge for the welterweight division. He's 6'2", but he's really thick and big. And most of the time when you get guys that tall in the welterweight division, they're skinny, like Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz is like 6'1", but he's skinny and he's, kind of slight. And Brandon Thatch is 6'2", but he's big and thick. He looks like a middleweight fighting at welterweight. He's a great striker, very dangerous, goes for the kill, very exciting, but he has very little ground skills, and they are definitely nowhere near his skills standing, and his past two fights have bore that out. He's lost by submission. So we'll see if he can get himself back on track, because he really was one of the biggest prospects in fighting just, a few years ago, and since then has completely fallen off the map. Another fight on the prelims that is interesting, just because I love watching this guy fight, is Mike Pyle versus Alex Garcia. Alex Garcia had a little hype behind him a little while ago, but he's lost some fights, so he's kind of lost some steam. He wants to try to get that back against a guy who is a legit veteran in Mike Pyle. Mike Pyle is one of those guys that the other fighters say in practice or in the gym, Mike Pyle is a motherfucker. He's a world champion in the gym. He's one of those guys that he can put together all of his skills. He's very well-rounded, very experienced, knows all the shortcuts that you can use in a fight, and uses them to his advantage very well. But his chin is kind of starting to slip. And since that fight with Matt Brown where he got viciously knocked out like at the very beginning of the fight, he hasn't quite looked the same. It's kind of sad. He's like 41, so he's getting very close to the end. If he loses this fight, I could see that being it. So that's kind of sad, but it's fighting. It's the way it is. It's a young man's sport. And at 41, I mean, even in baseball, 41 is old. So in fighting, 41 is like ancient. I mean, you might as well be a mummy. The main event of the prelims could be the main event of a main card. It's Johny Hendricks against Neil Magny. So it's 2 top 10 welterweights. Johny Hendricks was champion 3 fights ago. And he's fighting Neil Magny, who had been on a really long winning streak and then lost to Lorenz Larkin. Lorenz Larkin, who's looked amazing. And Neil Magny has looked amazing. Neil Magny is a great fighter, and my prediction for this... Well, I want to say again, I'm not really making predictions, because fighting is just too unpredictable. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you're making predictions, all you're doing is setting yourself up for failure. But I do believe that Neil Magny will win that fight. I feel like Johny Hendricks, his head is not in the game. He's yelling at the media about his weight cuts. He missed weight for this fight. He's got, so 20% of his purse is going to Magny anyway. He just doesn't seem focused. He hasn't seemed focused since he lost the belt to Robbie Lawler. And even in that fight against Robbie Lawler for the belt, he just didn't seem like he cared that much. He just didn't seem like he really, really wanted it anymore. And he's subsequently gotten his ass beat in 3 of his last 4 fights. I mean, the loss to Robbie Lawler to lose the title. Then he came back and he did beat Matt Brown by decision. But then, since then, he's had 2 really bad losses. One vicious knockout loss to Stephen Thompson, who's obviously unbelievable. And then a bad TKO loss to Kelvin Gastelum, who is very good. Kelvin Gastelum could be a championship fighter. He seems to be on the rise. But Johny Hendricks just hasn't looked or sounded, because everything he says also plays this out, but he just hasn't looked like his head is in it. He hasn't looked like he's got that championship focus anymore. And in this sport, that is the death nail. That is, the last nail in your coffin. That is, you will not win if you are not focused in this game. And so I do believe that Magny will control that fight. It's an odd fight because they are kind of similar and very different at the same time. They're both kind of pressure type fighters who use wrestling to control the pace and keep the fight where they want it. Neil Magny he utilizes a very good jab. He's got a crazy reach for the division. He's got an 80-inch reach, which is 4 or 5 inches higher than most other fighters in that division. And so he's usually got a significant reach advantage, and he uses his jab correctly to keep the distance that he wants. And he uses teeps and front kicks. He's just a very smart, very heady type of fighter. He's a very good grappler, and he's a lot stronger than he looks. He's very, very skinny and very slight guy, but he's more than capable of hanging in there strength-wise, even against a guy like Johny Hendricks, who obviously is a very thick, strong, powerful guy. Johny Hendricks is similar in the grappling department, but his striking is very different because he's kind of a short, squatty guy who's got a lot of knockout power. It's an odd thing with Johny Hendricks because he does have a lot of knockout power, and obviously he's got some of the craziest knockout highlights in MMA history belong to Johny Hendricks. I mean, fuck, he hit, what's that guy's name? I mean, he knocked out John Fitch with one punch, and it was crazy, but the highlight I would say he's most known for is the knockout of... I can't believe I can't remember that guy's name. Martin Kamen. Oh my god. Okay. His knockout on Martin Kamen is one of the craziest highlights in MMA history. I mean, Martin Kamen flew across the octagon when Johny Hendricks hit him. But Johny hasn't really seemed like he's had that level of power since then. I mean, he changed his striking technique kind of. I mean, he went more towards volume and a plethora of strikes. I can't think of the word I want to use, but he's mixing it up a lot more and throwing a lot more variety of strikes. And he throws these really nice, crisp combinations that he usually ends with a leg kick, which is exactly the way you're trained to do it. And so, his striking still looks good. It just doesn't have that fucking brain-crunching power that it used to have, and it's been a long time since Johny Hendricks knocked somebody out. So, it's not quite the same Johny Hendricks as he was when he was coming up, when he was on his way to the title, when he was fighting his way to the title. He was known, I mean, he seriously, at one point, it seemed like he was the premier power puncher in MMA, and it just hasn't been that way since he lost the title. Now, on the main card, the first fight is Louis Smolka versus Ray Borg, which is, definitely the least interesting fight on the main card. They're flyweights. I don't really know that much about either guy. I've seen Smolka fight a couple times. He's very tall for that division, for the 125-pound division. He's 5'9", which is probably, 3 or 4 inches taller than most of the other guys in that division. So he's usually got pretty good leverage, and he's got a reach advantage over most guys. He's pretty technical, pretty well-rounded. I've been impressed with him before when I've seen him fight, so I'm interested to see how he looks in this fight. I don't know much about Ray Borg, and so I'm not going to really talk much more about that fight because I just don't know how it's going to go. I don't know what to expect from Borg, and so I don't want to give my opinion about something that I really don't have much knowledge about. After the first fight on the main card, the last 3-4 fights are all awesome. The first one, Dong Hyun Kim against Tarek Saffiedine, that might be the fight I'm looking forward to most, honestly. Dong Hyun Kim is an interesting case because he came into the UFC as a judo fighter, and he was kind of a top control, stifling, technical position fighter. He's very good in the clinch. If he gets a hold of you in the clinch, you're probably going to end up on the ground. And then he would just be a blanket on guys for the rest of the fight. I mean, once he has top control, he's almost impossible to get off. I don't think I've ever seen anybody actually sweep or get Dong Hyun Kim off them once he's in top control. I mean, if he gets in top control, you're basically just praying for the referee to stand you up. Which could happen because I will say that Dong Hyun Kim is not very aggressive on the ground. Either with ground and pound or submissions. He's more content to hold position and control than he is to try to finish. At least that's how he was when he first came into the UFC, but he was winning fights and not getting any attention for it because he kind of had that boring top control, stifling style, and so nobody was really excited about him, even though he was winning fights. And so he kind of adopted this wild kamikaze type striking style where he just comes forward just throwing huge strikes kind of wildly and kind of dangerously. And it worked for him for a couple fights. He had a couple highlight reel knockouts back to back. And he started to generate some buzz, and he actually was in a number one contender fight with Tyron Woodley, who now is the champion, and he got knocked out. So he lost some of that momentum. He's won a fight since then, but I'm interested to see which Jung Young Kim it is. If he's looking to try to get Tarek Saffiedine down and control him, or if he's going for broke. And, either he's going to get knocked out or the other guy's going to get knocked out if he goes with that style. Which could be interesting against a guy like Saffiedine, who's definitely a striker and will definitely want to keep this fight standing. But he's a very controlled, very technical striker who wants to point fight you. He doesn't really have knockout power. I've never seen him finish anybody. He is a very good leg kick artist. He will wear your legs out with kicks. He will kick your legs over and over and over again. And his technique is so good and his footwork and stuff is so crisp that he gets it off before you get a chance to check it. And so he's going to be trying to stay on the outside, control the fight, control the pace, try to keep the striking crisp and technical and slick. If this becomes a barn burner or a dog fight or, a rough, ugly street fight, Jung Young Kim's going to have an advantage. He's definitely got the power advantage. He's definitely got the strength advantage. And if they get in close, if this fight, gets to the clinch, Jung Young Kim's going to take him down. And from that point, I don't see Tarek Saffiedine being able to get back up. So a lot of it'll depend on the approach of Jung Young Kim and whether or not the fight gets ugly or if it stays kind of a pretty kickboxing match. If it stays a pretty kickboxing match, then Saffiedine could definitely win a decision. But if it becomes more of an ugly barn burner type fight, then Jung Young Kim, I think, will definitely have an advantage. And so that fight is probably the closest one, in my opinion. I have a hard time saying which way I'm leaning on that one. I really just don't know what's going to happen in that fight. A lot of it depends on how Jung Young Kim approaches it, I think. Now, the last three fights are all high-level fights. The third fight is TJ Dillashaw against John Lineker in the bantamweight division. Now this is kind of a number one contender fight for the winner of the co-main event, which is the bantamweight championship fight between Garbrandt and Cruz. The winner of this fight between Dillashaw and Lineker will likely get the next title shot at bantamweight. Dillashaw is incredible. I mean, he's an incredible fighter. Nobody can deny that. He's got fantastic footwork, great movement, perfect cardio, great striking, knockout power, great wrestling. You just go down the list. TJ Dillashaw has basically every talent or every skill that you could possibly want as a fighter. I just hate him. He's a douche. He's a douchebag, and fucking what's his face? His coach. What's that idiot's name? Dwayne Ludwig. He's a fucking douchebag too. I hate both of those guys. I've heard them talk a lot on JRE and on the MMA Hour and all those podcasts and stuff. And Dwayne Ludwig is an idiot. I'm sorry. He knows what he's talking about fighting. He's a very good coach, an outstanding striking coach, and he's done a great job with Dillashaw in terms of fighting. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to fighting. I would never pretend that he doesn't. But he is a fucking idiot. He's an idiot and a douchebag, and I hate him. And I don't like Dillashaw either. I hope Lineker knocks Dillashaw the fuck out. That's what I hope happens. I just don't know. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Dillashaw is going to control the fight with his footwork and his pace, and he's not going to allow Lineker to get off very much offense. I think if you watched Lineker's fight with Dodson, which he lost, by the way. He won a decision, but it was bullshit. Dodson won that fight. But I think that's probably how this fight will play out a lot. I think Dillashaw will be dancing around him, countering, stinging him with good shots after Lineker's winging wild hooks. If Lineker can keep his footwork tight, keep his balance in every position, and cut the cage off effectively, he could definitely land a game-changing shot. I mean, he's got that kind of power. If he lands a shot square, this fight could change in a heartbeat. I just don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. I think Dillashaw will win the fight 30-27. I think he'll win every round, but I do think he'll win a decision. I don't think that he'll be able to finish Lineker. But like I said, I hope that's not the case. I hope Lineker takes his fucking head right off, and that his head flies through the air and fucking hits Duane Ludwig right between the eyes and kills him too. That's what I really hope happens. That would be my number one fucking hope for this fight, is that Lineker literally decapitates Dillashaw. The co-main event is, I think, a very similar fight. It's Dominick Cruz, the champion of the bantamweight division, against Cody Garbrandt, who is a very John Lineker-esque type fighter. He's got crisper strikes. He's got better technique on his punches. He was a professional boxer, and you can tell the difference between his technique on his strikes versus Lineker. But they are very similar fighters. They're, pressure, 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 haymaker. Pressure, 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 haymaker. They're trying to take your head off and knock you out. Now, that's exactly the type of fighter that Dominick Cruz is meant to beat. He eats those kind of power punches for breakfast with his footwork, his non-stop pace, and his perfectly timed takedowns. If Garbrandt does not keep his footwork perfect throughout the entire fight, if he does not make sure that his feet are in the perfect position, no matter where he's at or where Dominick Cruz is at, he will get taken down, he will get controlled, he will get stifled, and this fight will be 49-46 Dominick Cruz, or even 50-45 Dominick Cruz. If he keeps his footwork tight, if he keeps the pressure, if he pressures intelligently and cuts the cage off intelligently, he could land a game-changing shot. I mean, he has that kind of power, and that's definitely what he will be trying for. And of course, this is fighting, and so it could change in the blink of an eye. But I just don't see that happening. If they fought 10 times, I think Dominick Cruz would win 9 of them, or 8. He's just a much more technical, much more slick, and Garbrandt's style just plays right into Dominick Cruz's style. It's just a bad stylistic matchup for a guy like Garbrandt, who wants to come in and knock you out. His style is designed to beat guys like that, to stay out of the way, not get hit, take him down when he needs to, and just dance around them, countering, jabbing, and controlling the fight. And I think that's what's going to happen, unfortunately, because I'd really like to see Garbrandt knock out Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz is another one of those guys I just don't like. I just don't like his personality. He's incredibly smart. Dominick Cruz is incredibly smart, incredibly talented, incredibly tough, tenacious. I have all kinds of respect for him, but he's a fucking douchebag. He comes off as a douchebag, and I think he is a douchebag in real life. I don't hate him quite as much as Duane Ludwig. But, I'd definitely be happy if Garbrandt went in there and knocked him out. Now that brings us to the main event, which I'm excited to see the fight. I'm interested to see how it goes down. I think a lot of the outcome depends on Ronda Rousey's frame of mind going into the fight and Amanda Nunes's cardio going into the fight. Because for one round, Amanda Nunes is a force of nature. I mean, Amanda Nunes, outside of Anthony Johnson or like Hector Lombard, Amanda Nunes might be the most dangerous fighter in the world for one round. I'm interested to see whether you guys agree with that or not. Because if you think back a few years ago when Amanda Nunes fought Kat Zingano and lost, the reason she lost that fight is because she was out of gas after the first round. But what happened in the first round? She fucking took Zingano down and crushed her with some vicious ground and pound that would have finished most of the girls in that division. And if you look at all of her fights since then, she just destroys people, man. She destroys them. The punch she landed on Miesha Tate to win the title, that right hand that she stung her with and then finished her on the ground, that was fucking brutal, man. And Miesha Tate has said so. Miesha Tate said that's the hardest she's ever been hit in her life, is that right hand that Amanda Nunes landed on her in the first round of their fight. And so I think if Rousey goes in there flat-footed, if she goes in there without any of that old invincible Ronda Rousey aura about her, if she goes in there with the least amount of hesitation or not non-belief, or if she doesn't go in there confident, if she doesn't go in there saying I'm fucking invincible, I'm gonna beat this bitch's ass, and I'm fucking Ronda Rousey, I'm here to take my belt back, she's gonna get crushed. She's gonna get stung. She's gonna get knocked down, and then Amanda Nunes is gonna plaster her face to the ground, and it'll be a quick stoppage. I see this either being a quick first round stoppage for Amanda Nunes or a third round submission for Ronda Rousey. I don't see this fight going all 5 rounds either way. I don't think either of these girls are 5-round fighters. I don't think Ronda Rousey is a 5-round fighter. I think she's definitely betting on finishing you before the 5th round. And Amanda Nunes is certainly that kind of fighter. Amanda Nunes is a force of nature for 1 round, and then after that, if Ronda Rousey survives the first round, her chances of winning this fight go up dramatically. But will she survive that first round? I don't think Ronda's going to survive the first round. I think Amanda Nunes is going to come out and fucking crush her with a right hand and then break her. I really do. I really think Amanda Nunes is going to finish Ronda Rousey in the first round. But there is that caveat. If Ronda Rousey makes it out of the first round, I believe Ronda Rousey will win this fight. I believe she'll win it by submission, and I believe she'll win it in the 3rd round. That's very detailed for me. I'm definitely going to try to keep these videos vague because I don't want to look like a fucking idiot when the exact opposite happens. But in this fight, Amanda Nunes is going to either finish her in the first round or Ronda Rousey is going to finish her in the 3rd. Maybe the 2nd, but I see Amanda Nunes having enough gas to last until the 3rd round, and then she's going to, poop out, and that's going to be it. Rousey's going to get her down and get one of those arm bars. So I definitely don't see that fight going all 5 rounds. If I was going to bet on this fight, I would bet on that. I would bet on a finish. I wouldn't bet on who would win. I would bet that somebody will win by stoppage. I definitely don't see this fight going to decision. So it'll be a 5-round boring ass decision now that I've said that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the main card. I mean, my thoughts on UFC 207 in general, actually. It's a pretty good card. I'm looking forward to it. I definitely, will watch every fight. I'm excited for the fights, and I will definitely be putting out a video after with my analysis of what goes down. It's not the best card ever, but it's a pretty good card, full of interesting fights, and even on the fights that aren't that interesting, there's at least one fighter in the fight that I care about or that I'm interested to see fight again. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be watching it with my whole family, so I might record a little bit during the fights to kind of give you guys a taste of what I want to do in the future with like Alan, Sally's brother, and Cody, my brother. Try to get maybe a little roundtable discussion going. So we'll see what happens. But I'm definitely going to be putting out another video after the fights are over, probably on Saturday or Sunday. So make sure you check that one out too. Make sure you like and subscribe this video. I just put out a video about the Cowboys' last game against the Lions, so make sure you check that one out too. And any kind of support is always highly appreciated, guys. And if you guys can, watch these videos and then hopefully share them on your social media sites, I can't put into words how grateful I would be for that, because that's the only way that people will see these. I mostly make these because I really do love talking about things, analyzing things, giving my opinion, giving my viewpoint, how I see things. I love doing that. But, obviously you want to feel like there's a reason behind it, or that somebody at least is going to see it. So if you guys, any help I get from any of you guys, like and subscribe these videos and share them on your Facebook or your Instagram or, whatever. But alright, guys, I will definitely be putting out a video over the weekend about the pay-per-view. I hope the fights go down well, Later.